Hello and welcome to the video. Today we're going to carry on from the previous video where we placed the joints in the face, and we're going to go about skin weighting some of those joints. We're going to look at some of the problem areas as well as just give you a general kind of working method to use for doing the rest of the face. I won't skin weight all of the face live on air because that would take ages and you'll get bored. A lot of it is just replication of the same thing. So we'll have a look at skin weighting some of the areas, and then the rest is kind of up to you. So the first thing we want to do is select this head joint and press Ctrl A or click the attribute editor button at the top. Come down to draw style and switch it from bone to multi-child as box. As you can see, this reduces a lot of the visual clutter. With that done, we can now select our face and go up to skin, paint skin weights and click the box. This shows us all the joints that are connected to that mesh. Now, our face joints aren't actually active right now, so we're going to need to go in and add them as an extra influence. So again, skin and then edit influences and click the box for add influence, and we want to tick on lock weights. This will basically make any new influence have exactly that weight. It won't be shared equally, and we'll set that to 0. So we need to do this with every joint, but we'll do it with one to show you how it comes in. And you see the little lock symbol. We will be taking that off, otherwise we can't actually assign any weight to it. Once we tick that box off, we're able to paint weights just like we normally would. So we'll go to paint and then replace, change our value and opacity, and then we can start painting some weights. If you see, I change the size of my brush. I do that a lot. If you hold down the B for brush key, and you can drag your cursor to make it bigger or smaller. So now we need to go in and just select all of our face joints. I recommend doing this in the outliner, and we'll add them all as new influences, minus the one that we've already added. That one, I think. So now skin, edit influences, add influence, just double check that you've got your settings right, and then click apply. So now they will all be added to our influences, and they should all be locked. And you can see, you can check them on and off manually, or you can select the top option and go all the way down to the bottom, holding down Shift and press click, and it will select them all and then turn them all off in one foul swoop, instead of going through and manually clicking on each one off and on. Once we have all of our joints added, we now need to tell each part of the skin which joints are going to affect it. Now, the face generally will split its weight between a couple of joints, but will always have like a main base joint, like the head joint, as a kind of a fallback option. So we're going to just go in and select each joint one by one and paint just very roughly where it's going to affect the face. We go through the whole face doing this, and then we'll come back, select the head joint, and make sure that all of the face has some influence assigned to the head. The reason for this is that every time you remove weight from an area, it has to go somewhere. So all we're trying to do is establish right from the beginning that each part of the face is affected by the joint that's next to it and also the head joint. So one by one, select a joint, paint a little bit of weight, move on to the next, paint a little bit of weight, and then we'll come back at the end and we'll select the main head joint and just broad stroke the whole face with some influence, so that when we start doing this more in a more detailed kind of way, then the influence is heading in the way we want it to, instead of just heading to some other random joint. The last thing we want is to remove some influence from an eyebrow and it end up on a finger, and trust me, that happens. So we're going to just make sure we establish which joints affect what, and we choose the head joint because it does not fold. It's not a joint that, like your elbow, where it folds and creases. The head joint moves one big center of mass and never actually folds, so it's a great joint to use as a backup weight joint for when you're adding and removing from different areas. Now you will find it with the eyebrows and the forehead, you will want to share some influence between a couple of joints. That's cool. However, you still also want, as a fallback option, to have the head joint assigned some weight. While weight painting, I always like to do one side and check it with the other side to do more or less the same kind of weighting. Again, we're just kind of moving quickly to get it established, but still, it's always good to try to keep some kind of symmetry. There is a mirror option, but I prefer the manual approach. At this stage, we're mostly just moving from one joint to the next kind of adjacent joint and establishing where they overlap. And we go around doing this for the majority of the kind of less complicated joints under the eyes, eyebrows, and whatnot, before we get on to some of the more very specific areas like the eyelids, the lips, and the actual jaw. So all we're doing is just selecting a joint, painting roughly where we want it to be, and letting it bleed into the next joint, the logical joint, so that you can kind of not have any rough edges. And it's important to just come out of the tool, click a joint, move it up and down, and see how it's looking to see if you're getting the right kind of influence from it. If you do notice any kind of jaggedness or rough edges, come back into the tool and change to the smooth tool, put it at a kind of a less than 1 number, a lower weight, and just paint over the 2 joints that affect that area, or 3 joints, and give it a bit of a smooth and test it again. When it comes to the jaw joint, we need a slightly different approach. I tend to like to set a key at its neutral pose, then open it wide and set another key at frame 10 or 15. This just means that we can stay in the tool and still have the jaw open and shut. And what we need here is big, large areas of influence. So we put the brush quite big. We can put the influence fairly low, make sure we take it off smooth. And we're just going to be blotting in a massive lump of area, and I tend to try to start with the lower areas first, so it kind of peels away from the lips, so under the chin itself, and then kind of moving up to the cheeks and closer to where the lip area is. We do this because the lip area is very, very tricky, and what you want to do is slowly, bit by bit, build up on parting those lips, and it's very easy to accidentally select the upper lip, and you don't want to do that. So if you do that, undo what you've just done, or go in, put your value to 0 and just delete the weight. So we scattergun kind of under the chin and jaw, and then we zoom in a little bit close, put our brush a little bit smaller and gradually build up on parting those lips little by little. And it really is important to be very delicate here because you can easily make a mistake. And you can soon start to see that the lips begin to part away, like the lower lip starts to come away from the upper lip, and you're making progress. There's no point in rushing this. It doesn't take that long, but it does take a long time if you keep making mistakes. So just gently go in and part those lips bit by bit. It's almost impossible to get this perfect, so don't stress too much. Just try not to add influence to the upper lip, and where you spot that you have, go back and remove it as you're going along. Don't leave it lingering. And all we want to do is just keep plucking away, keep adding weight, keep parting the lower lips until we get to the point where we can see inside the mouth and start adding some to the inside of the mouth. And once we kind of have a fairly good or fairly well established lower jaw movement, we can then start switching to the smooth tool and smoothing out some of the jagged edges and kind of just refining our approach a bit. But you will not get it perfect this way. Don't be disheartened if you open the mouth and it still looks a little bit weird. That's because we have our lower lip joints attached, and they will control a fair amount of what happens to the mouth when we open our jaw. So get it kind of looking fairly smooth and opening fairly close to how you would like it, knowing full well that your lower lip joints are actually going to do a lot of the lifting as well. Once we're looking pretty good, give it a good smoothing pass, swapping from one area to the next, making it kind of symmetrical. Then we can start thinking about actually adding some weight to those lip joints. So much like the jaw joint, we want to select one or two of these lip joints, put a key on them, and then move it and put another key on it so you can actually check on the influence. And we have to be conscious of the fact that we're balancing weight from the lip with the weight from the jaw. So it's always a fine kind of balancing act that we're doing here. Much like with the eyebrow, we will add weight in the specific area near the joint and then let it bleed out towards the next appropriate joint or area and start working our way through. So it's important to put an extra higher kind of focus on the area where the joint is, and then come back and do another pass, letting it spread out and bleed. We can do this fairly roughly, knowing that the next joint is then going to be kind of balancing some of that weight, and just work our way around before we come back and start smoothing. And typically you'll spend more time on the lips than kind of any other area on the face. It's a very mobile area and they pull some very intricate shapes. So you'll be placing weight, bleeding it into a surrounding area, smoothing it, testing it, coming back in, adding or removing weight from one joint, adding or removing to another, smoothing it, testing it again until you kind of feel like the lips are moving in an organic feeling way and that they have enough influence attached. It's very difficult to get it perfect, so you will just be iterating on this. So don't get too attached to any one pass of weight painting. Just keep plugging away, add some, smooth it, move to the next, add smooth, move back, have a little test, add smooth, add smooth, add smooth, and rinse and repeat for what will feel like an eternity. Now, we have added in two joints to the side of the lips, like bulges, and they're really important weights. They allow the corner of our lips to kind of like be fairly mobile and then hit an area where two joints are that also control that kind of bleed area, so that you can start to create a more interesting shape at the corner of the mouths than you could if you only had those corner joints. You can try it without these, but honestly, it's very difficult to get a legitimate smile unless you have those two bulge joints. They allow you to kind of move a bigger area of the skin to the side of the lips. And if every time you moved the lip, it moved that area, then subtle movements would look mental because they'd be controlling like half of your face. So those joints are really, really important for having accurate smiles and more extreme facial expressions, but you don't use them all of the time while we're talking. So we try to put a real like high spot in the corners whilst giving it quite a big bleed, knowing full well that these bulge joints are going to control in a very soft way quite a large area and allow us to get creases and also bigger kind of movements locked into our face without just having to use those corner joints. That more or less wraps up this video. In the next one, we'll have a little look at the eyeballs and the eyelids, two kind of specialist areas that need a slightly different approach, and maybe a quick little summing up of the approach. Cool. I hope that was useful. I'll see you soon.